What's up, YouTube? Um, I want to do a video talking about an incident that took place in Philadelphia. Usually I don't do videos um one right after the other in regards to certain incidents that take place, and I usually try to leave it up to other YouTubers to cover stories. Especially when it comes to law enforcement. I throw my 2 cents in, whatever. But in this case, it, it, I'm trying to understand the mindset of law enforcement. I really am. Because, okay, so in Philadelphia, you had the incident with Walter Wallace Jr., which can be deemed as controversial. In my opinion, I don't think that that particular incident that took place with the officer and that young man should spark any protests, rioting, or looting, or whatever may take place. But to each his own. For those who feel differently, I understand. I understand where you're coming from on your end. You know, me, I personally don't deem it necessary. Now, in reference to that, what took place after with another incident following the protest that was currently taking place at that time was the mother with her nephew and her 2 year old child coming down the road, basically coming in confrontation with the protests and the police. Now, for those who know of the story and know the outcome and saw the situation as it transpired and as it was unfolding, you know, um, before I get into what they did, let me tell you how I see. And I'm not even an officer, but common sense does play a role in people who can't think with common sense. Um, if I was an officer, because a lot of people say when I give my opinions on something, and it's like, well, you're not a cop, but how would you handle the situation since you know so much? I tell you, for the simpletons. Okay, if you had a line of officers that were between them and the protesters, and then you had the traffic behind you, and if you, as an officer, noticed that you had traffic or people in vehicles coming down the road, which they couldn't get by or get through, you would take a couple of officers, redirect the traffic, walk up to the cars and say, "Hey, this is a no passing zone. We'll hold this part off. Guide you through so you can turn around and you can be on your way." That would be the most logical way to handle a situation like that. But instead, what happened? Well, what ended up happening is that the mother ended up getting mobbed by the law enforcement that was holding the line. There must have been at least over a dozen officers that surrounded her vehicle, bashing the windows in, tearing her ass out the vehicle, beating the brakes off of her, snatching her nephew out the car, pounding on him, and somehow the baby ended up with some kind of bruise on their head. Explain to me, how is that an example of protecting and serving? To me, they acted with the mentality of a mob. But yet you have people that want to point the fingers at protesters and condemn their actions. But I'm sure there are those that are justify the police actions and giving them a pat on the back, saying, "Bravo, good job for terrorizing this mother, beating the shit out of her, beating up on kids, and we commend you for that." And what add insult to injury is that they ended up putting on Facebook a post of a white female officer holding the toddler and giving their spin on it. And then when the actual facts was coming out, oh, they had to take that shit down because the truth that, well, their version that they try to spin to get ahead of it because it was a PR nightmare. You know, the Philadelphia Union tried to get ahead of that until she ended up getting people to her lawyers and other people to represent her to say, "Oh no, that's not what happened." So of course, you know, they had to take that shit down. When you have an incident that's already taken place, when you already have a city that's already at an unrest, what do you do if you are affiliated with law enforcement to keep the unrest at a minimum? Do you do things to keep things calm? Or do you agitate the situation by taking another incident and flaming the fire? Or as they say, fanning the flames or whatever. I mean, what really is the mindset of law enforcement? I mean, do you guys just don't give a fuck? Because I mean, on one end, you sit there, you try to get all this sympathy about how your job is so difficult and how you are so in fear of your lives and you don't know what it's like to be an officer. But at the same token, I want to hear you. I want to sympathize with you. But it's like you guys just don't give a fuck about the citizens. Like, fuck us. We are held at a higher standard as people, as taxpayers, than you law enforcement who our tax money is going to, along with the shit that you collect from all the revenue in other areas and shit, which sucks us the fuck dry, and you just benefiting off of it. And it's a fucking joke to you guys. You don't give a fuck. And then some of you get offended when you need not to get offended. If you don't want to be offended, check the motherfuckers that need to be checked. Because they're giving you a bad fucking rep. You don't like people generalizing, right? But it seems like you guys act upon generalizations. You deem everybody as being a threat. But we're not supposed to look at you in fear. We're not supposed to look at you as being a threat to our safety, to our preservation of life. I mean, let's be real. The pendulum doesn't just swing one way to cater to one side. It doesn't. If you're in fear for your life, then so the fuck are we. If you feel the need to protect yourself, then so do we. You have the power. And it seems like we are at your fucking mercy with any interaction or altercation. You don't want people speaking on it, then change it. Otherwise, you are going to continue getting the criticism and you're going to continue getting the backlash. So you need to figure this shit out. Because you sit there and cry about, oh, you got families and kids to go home to. What the fuck you think we go home to? Dry land and shit? We just go into a fucking hole in the ground? I mean, if that's the kind of shit that you entertain as far as the way you see us as we're not humans, as we're just fucking moving targets and shit for you to just practice on. I mean, let's be real. Have that open dialogue of honest conversation. And don't just say what you want the public to hear, just so it sounds good. Be real. Just be honest. And don't hide behind little fucking posts and your memes and your Facebooks and all this other shit that ends up coming out in the dirty laundry later on. You know what I'm talking about. But anyway, until next time, till next video.